In July 1947, Roswell was a small, sleepy town surrounded by ranches and desert. It was also home to the 509th Bomb Squadron, which was the most elite military group in the world. They had just dropped 2 bombs on Japan and tested a couple more in the Pacific. America had won the war, and just when it seemed like life was getting back to normal, a strange thing happened. Something large and silver hurtled out of the sky and ploughed into the desert with a bang. A local rancher found the pieces of a, well, whatever it was, and reported it to the local airbase. The government took immediate interest, and for the first and only time in US history, issued a press release stating the crash of a flying disc. In 1947, Jesse Marcel was the intelligence officer at the Roswell Air Base. And when news of the flying disc hit town, it was Marcel's job to investigate. Before he died, he told Friedman his story. The seed was planted, and the Roswell conspiracy was born.
I first talked to Jesse in '78. This is before any books were out. It was before there was a big public noise of any kind. The people in ufology didn't know about Roswell. It was de nouveau. I mean, it was there, but nobody knew about it.
I found one piece of metal, what looked like metal anyway. It was not flexible, but it was as thin as a foil of a pack of cigarettes. I tried to make a dent in this metal, but he says, you can't bend it. You can't make a mark on it. He says, I took a sledgehammer and whammed it. I put it on the ground and whammed it. The sledgehammer bounced off of it. It was definitely not a weather balloon. And it was an aircraft. So what it could have been, I wouldn't know.
Luckily for us, before returning to Hangar 84 with pieces of the crashed disc, Jesse Marcel stopped at home to show his wife and his son, Jesse Marcel Jr.
That July night in Roswell, one I'll never forget because of the uniqueness of it, marked a dividing point in my life before the event and after the event. I was sound asleep. It was, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And my dad came into the bedroom and he woke me up. He says, come here, Jesse, I got something I want you to see. He was very excited, and my dad wasn't given to excitement, so this is kind of unusual for him. So I knew that, well, whatever it was must be pretty important. He went over, got my mother, and got her up. And he had pre-positioned some debris on the floor of the kitchen. Then he said, this is flying saucer material. Then there were some, looked like I-beam fragments. And on the inner surface, there was, I thought, hieroglyphic writing. I said, what is this?
Marcel and his father had this piece of the debris recreated from memory so that they could show the world what they saw that night.
On the inner surface of this little beam, you have the symbols. And the one that I recall as being most accurate is one on the end, because I could tie it in with familiar objects, such as a seal balancing a ball on its nose. The meaning of these symbols escapes my feeble mind there. Maybe it says, do not flush in zero gravity or something like that.
There are those who believe that what came down at Roswell was more than just a disc. Tom Carey and Don Schmidt are seasoned UFO investigators. They have dedicated over 20 years to this story, and they are convinced that they have uncovered the truth.
What crashed at Roswell was not of this earth. This has been confirmed to us by scores of witnesses who witnessed the craft and its deceased occupants.
Real dead aliens? Now we're talking.
There were up to 5, 6, 7 bodies found at 3 locations, we believe. It wasn't until just a few years ago that we found out that Mac Brazel, who found the original wreckage, also found bodies at a site just a few miles from the debris field.
And how do they know this? Tom and Don talked to witnesses and their daughters and brothers and grandchildren, all of whom described bizarrely similar things.
I think by the very consistency of the eyewitness testimony, we were dealing with something, as one of the retired officers once stated, well, they sure weren't from Texas.
They were small, they had large heads for their size.
They had very large heads that were shaped larger on the top, and they kind of tapered down.
The heads were very much larger than the body. It was out of proportion for the size of the body, the head. The eyes were very deeply set back and set in. The amazing thing about the skulls that they were kind of flexible, that it wasn't, like a hard skull.
And Granddaddy said their heads were large, and the little suit that they had on was just, you couldn't, it was just like silk or something.
And humanoid looking, humanesque looking, but not like us.
There are problems with witness testimony. Maybe they want to believe so badly that they don't realize they're stretching the truth. For Roswell in particular, a huge problem is the 40 or 50 years that have elapsed. You don't even find it in UFO books from the 60s. And then all of a sudden, like a phoenix from the ashes, Roswell evolves into this huge expanding mythology. And one of the signs that it is just an expanding mythology is the divergence of stories. Instead of the stories converging on what really happened, stories are diverging. Instead of one crash site, we have 6 different crash sites. You take your pick. Which UFO author do you like? You pick his crash site.
It's claimed that this is a real alien autopsy, and that the critter being cut up was recovered from the crash site at Roswell. An Englishman named Ray Santilli claimed he discovered this allegedly authentic, shocking footage from a military cameraman in Florida. Recognizing its shock value, Ray was looking for a buyer. Enter Bob Kiviat, a longtime Los Angeles producer of paranormal programming.
When I started communicating with Ray Santilli's offices in England, it was very obvious that Ray had waited and hoped that someone like me, with network TV experience with UFOs and aliens, would contact him. As far as I was concerned, if he was claiming he had secured footage of the Roswell event, autopsies of the creature, it sounded so too good to be true.
More than a little intrigued, Bob Kiviat boarded a plane to England to see if this footage was worth all the hype.
Ray Santilli took out a tape, he popped it into a machine, and my mouth dropped open. Looked like a little female alien that was pregnant, because right away my mind's going wild with ideas about what this might be. Looked like a science fiction movie, literally. Then the scene unfolds, and the rest is history. I watched the entire autopsy of this creature, pretty much, that the public has since come to know as the alien autopsy, and with my mouth hanging open, I'm sure. I can't believe I even said a word. Maybe I said unbelievable. Maybe I said incredible. It looked potentially authentic.